I know you're probably wondering why in the world am I where I am. I'm out at Lakewood East Park in Detroit, but the power is out in the church during the week. Not Sunday morning, but during the week. The power just went out today, and I had to record the sermon early because my wife and I are on our way to Washington, D.C. We're going to participate in the installation of ministry of the Reverend Dr. Brandon Harris at the People's Congregational United Church of Christ. That church is very close to my church in Hart, and Reverend Harris is close to me, and he's asked me to offer the prayer of installation. So I'm looking forward to that, and those of you who are in the DC area, I hope you'll be present at Reverend Harris's installation. If not, call me up and I would like to see you. So let me share with you what I'm preaching about today. My sermon today is entitled Favor. I don't know if you've ever given some thought to the favor of God, but I want to preach about the favor of God, faith in God, our friends, and our family. And you know, there's nothing under the sun that you cannot find in the Bible. My message today is straight from Genesis chapter 37. You can open up your Bible right now, and I want you to check it out. But this is the story of Joseph. Joseph, the one with the coat with the long sleeves. Some versions say it was a coat made up of many colors. But in the 37th chapter, the book of Genesis, we learn about Joseph. Joseph is the son of Jacob, the son of Jacob and Rachel. And Joseph was the favorite of his father. He was his father's favorite because he's the son of Rachel. And you know, sometimes in life, we have a similar situation where we are a favorite. We're a favorite of somebody, and we wonder sometimes, where in the world did that favor come from? You know, but favor is real. Some people say favor is unfair. I'm not big enough to say favor is unfair. All I can say is that favor is real. And God has favored you just like God has favored me. But favor comes in many different colors, many different sizes and shapes. One person is born white, another black. And in America today, if you're born white, you are entitled. You get better loans, you get better opportunities on so many levels. And it's just a matter of, you know, your skin tone. You know, one person is born into a rich family, another into a poor family. You know, one is born on one side of the tracks, the other is born on another. That's favor. One is born, you know, I think I'm reasonably healthy, but in my same DNA line, I had a sister, Sarah, who was born at 2 years of age. She's stricken. And you could say, well, is that an example of favor or not? I don't know. And I don't want to put that out there. All I know is that there are differences. I went to Trader Joe one day. I forget what time of the day or the week it was, but I went to Trader Joe's once. And while my brother was declining, Steve, and you know, I made the mistake of telling my wife, I said, Denise, I went to Trader Joe today just to get some groceries. And a woman who to me seemed to be breathtakingly beautiful came up to me and she said, you're Steve Hood's brother, aren't you? And I said, well, yes. I said, who are you? And she told me who she is. And you know, I knew exactly who she was when she told me who she was, but I didn't recognize who she was. And you know, in today's world, people were wearing masks and everything. And so I go home, and you know, Denise wants to give the voir dire. You know, she wants to ask me all these questions. You know, what happened at the grocery store today? And I told her, I said, Denise, you won't believe it, but I met a woman. A woman came up to me who was breathtakingly beautiful. And she told me she was a friend of Steve's. And then Denise forgot all about, you know, friend of Steve. She said, tell me about this woman who was breathtakingly beautiful. What was it about her that was so beautiful? I said, I don't know. I said, all I know is she was beautiful. But that's the favor of God. And favor comes in many sizes, many shapes, many colors, many heights. And so Joseph in the Bible is described as one who has the favor of God. We are introduced to him in the 37th chapter, where the Bible tells us he's 17 years of age. And he's following the sheep. And really, he is working with the older brothers. You know, it was a polygamous society. His father had children by a woman named Bilhah and another one named, I'm drawing a blank on her name, Zilpah. And they are the handmaidens of Leah, his wife, his first wife. The second wife is Rachel. Joseph is born to Jacob and Rachel. The other sons were born to the concubine of Leah. And so, you know, there's some natural tension there anyway. And I don't know if anybody's ever told you about polygamous society, but sometimes it's not all hunky-dory. Matter of fact, you can live in a monogamous family and it's not all hunky-dory. And that's another sermon, a hunky-dory kind of love. But Joseph is the youngest son of these brothers. Now there's one younger than him named Benjamin, who was also born to his mother Rachel. And Rachel died in childbirth with Benjamin. And again, that's another sermon. Maybe one day I'll tell you a little bit about that. But today I want to talk about the favor of God. And so you have these brothers, I think there are 11 of them, and Joseph is the youngest. And they don't like him from the get-go. They're not crazy about Joseph because they knew that their father loved Joseph more than he loved them. And so Joseph starts talking. And you know, the Bible tells us in the 37th chapter that around the 4th verse, his brothers did not speak peacefully to him, peaceably. There's tension that's going on. Then to make it worse, Joseph has a dream. And in the dream, he has a sheaf, and every one of his brothers has a sheaf. But he says, and then he has the nerve to tell his brothers his dream. Sometimes you just have to learn how to keep your big mouth shut. He tells the brothers, you know, I had a sheaf, and each of you had a sheaf. But at some point, each of your sheaves bowed down to my sheaf. And then it was on. The brothers were mad at him. They said, are you saying that one day we're going to bow down to you? And, you know, Joseph, you know, he's like a lot of people say, oh, you know, I didn't really say anything. I didn't mean anything by that. And so their relationship is beginning to devolve. Then he has another dream. And in the other dream, the next dream, there are 11 stars in the sky, a sun and a moon. And in that second dream, both the sun and the moon and all the stars bow down to Joseph's star. And he told his brothers, and they said, what? Do you mean we're going to one day have to bow down to you? And then he had the nerve to go, you know, again, he should have just kept his big mouth shut. He went to his father. Now you got to remember, his mother's dead. She died in childbirth with Benjamin. But he goes to his dad and he says, Dad, I had this dream that the sun and the moon and all the stars bowed down to my star. He said, what do you think about that? And his dad got mad at him. He said, what? He said, do you mean to say that your mother and your father will bow down to you? And Joseph said, well, it's just a dream that I had. But then the Bible tells us, again in the 37th chapter of Genesis, that that the father, Jacob, kept these things in his heart. Now I want you to follow with me the rest of the story. It's kind of a complicated story, but I'm going to do my best to share it with you. And as I go through this story, I want you to think about the favor of God. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to break it down point by point by point. So listen to what happens next. Joseph goes back to the dad and he gives a bad report on his brothers. And you know, parents listen to the bad report. When I was a little boy in New Orleans, we had a babysitter, the only male babysitter I remember, named Frank. And you know, one Friday night, my mom and my dad went out on a date, and Frank was babysitting us. And Emery and I, we really liked Frank because Frank was cool. But you know, once my parents left home, Emery looked at the horizontal deep freeze, and he said, I wonder what would happen if I climbed inside the deep freeze. And Frank, being an obliging male babysitter, Frank said, well, you want to go in the deep freeze? And Emery said, yeah. And so Frank picked up Emery, opened up the top, and put Emery in the horizontal deep freeze. Then he closed the top. Now he only did it for a couple seconds, but when my parents came home and Frank was gone, you know, my parents asked me, he said, well, how did things go? And I said, well, you know, Frank put Emery in the deep freeze. And that was the last time Frank ever babysat for us. I gave a bad report on Frank. And, you know, almost 70 years later, I'm thinking about that. I'm saying I'm feeling a little sorry because Frank lost his little revenue stream. But even as a little boy, I knew that that wasn't right. He shouldn't have put Emery in the deep freeze. I don't know if anybody looking at this ever had a brother or sister, maybe yourself, wanted to get in the deep freeze. But let me get back to Joseph and his coat of many colors. And so this is how the story goes. One day, after bringing a bad report on his brothers to the father, Joseph is sent back by the father, I think really to keep an eye on the big brothers. And I don't know if anybody looking at this has ever had a situation where your one parent, you know, wanted you to, you know, give a report on your brothers and sisters. But Joseph is he's a happy-go-lucky child. He's skipping, he's walking his way to find the flock of sheep. And on the way, the brothers can see him from the hilltop. And they say, behold, this dreamer cometh. Let's kill him, and then we'll see what happens to his dreams. Can you imagine a brother or sister wanting to kill a brother or sister? But that's what happens in the case of Joseph. And Joseph, in an unsuspecting way, he's just walking, skipping through the fields, dodging the sheep dung. And on his way, his brothers are looking down from on high saying, we're going to kill that sucker. And we're going to see what happens to his dreams. And so as Joseph gets closer, the drama gets deeper. He gets closer and closer to the brothers. And when he gets real close to the brothers, wearing that fine coat that his dad has made for him, the brothers start beating him. And they're beating him like a grown man in the way grown men get beat. And you know, it doesn't take many blows from a grown man to kill a person. And I don't know if they knock him out or what, but he's immobilized. And then the only thing that saves him is an older brother named Reuben. Some people call this the Reuben option. And Reuben talks to the other brothers. He said, don't kill him. He said, you know, we've already put a beating on him, but don't kill him. And Reuben says, let's sell him into slavery. You know, there are these slave traders that come by on camels. Let's just sell him. We can make a few dollars on it, but don't kill him. And, you know, he's already lost his other brother. and it would just be too much to our father. And so they took off the coat with the long sleeves, the coat of many colors. They take that off of Joseph, they kill a sheep, and they douse the jacket in the sheep's blood. Reuben goes off thinking that, he can sneak back and get Joseph out of the pit. He's in a pit in the ground now, covered up. But he goes off, and as he sneaks back, he thinks that he can get Joseph out of the pit and save his life. But as he opens up the pit, Joseph is gone. And he's gone because the older brothers have sold him already into slavery. He's sold into this Egyptian slave trade. And they never see Joseph again until much, much later in life. And so the drama gets greater. The older brothers take the bloody coat back to the dad, Jacob. Jacob is heart torn. He's lost his youngest son, Benjamin, to childbirth. Now his favorite son, Joseph, apparently is dead. There's nothing but this beautiful coat that the dad had made for him, and it's doused in blood. And so the dad, is messed up emotionally for the rest of his life because of this. And one day I'll preach about what happens at the end of Jacob's life. But let's go back to this favor of God. So you have Joseph, who's the favorite of his father. He's sold into slavery in Egypt. And there in Egypt, Joseph is bought by a man named Potiphar. And Potiphar is the captain of the Egyptian guard. He works for Pharaoh. And Potiphar hires Joseph. He takes him into his house, and all seems to be going well. You would say, well, the favor of God is shining upon Joseph. He becomes the head of the whole household of Potiphar. And while in Potiphar's house, the Bible tells us that Joseph had reign over everything, everything except the wife of Potiphar. And life is funny. You have one thing, and either that's what you want or somehow it gets in your way. In the case of Joseph, he's so glad to be out of jail, so glad to be out of slavery. He don't want to mess with Potiphar's wife, but Potiphar's wife wants him. She wants Joseph, and she starts making eyes at Joseph. I can imagine her winking at Joseph. I can imagine maybe she's waving at Joseph. Maybe she's showing Joseph a little skin. Maybe she's blowing kisses at Joseph. Who knows? I got Mike Daniels with me out here at Lakeside East. He's blowing kisses. Imagining Potiphar's wife. But Potiphar's wife, she gets closer and closer to Joseph. And then the next thing, she said, Joseph, come on, sleep with me. And he said, Potiphar is my master. Said, matter of fact, he's yours too. And Potiphar has given me charge of everything in his house except for you. And now you're coming on at me? He said, I can't do this. And Potiphar's wife, at one point, she grabs Joseph. She grabs him tight. She lets him feel her womanly charms. He can smell her perfume. And he can feel her heart beating. And Joseph knows that this is going downhill fast. And so, it's very quickly. And so he breaks away from Potiphar's wife. But as he breaks away and tries to run away from Potiphar's wife, she grabs hold of his clothes, his Egyptian, tunic and everything. She pulls it off. Next thing you know, she runs outside holding up his outfit and his robe. And she says, my master's servant tried to rape me. And matter of fact, there he is right there. And, what are the men in the city to do other than they arrest Joseph? Potiphar comes back and he says, what is going on? I put you in charge of everything and you wanted my wife? And Joseph says, no, master, it's really not like that. you know, I did not go after your wife. Like Bill Clinton, he would say, I did not have sex with that woman. And I think Potiphar must have smelled a rat, because there are men today, if another man was accused of going after their wife, they might try to kill him. Right. And Potiphar is a soldier. He's the captain of the guard. Why is it Potiphar doesn't want to cut Joseph? You think about that. And I'm wondering, was Joseph the first man Potiphar's wife ever went after? He probably wasn't. But Potiphar, not wanting to be disgraced any more than he's already disgraced, he puts Joseph in prison. And it looks like Joseph's going to have to serve out his whole life in prison. But again, the favor of God comes into the life of Joseph. Because while in prison, there's a butcher and a baker who work for Pharaoh. And they have dreams that have troubled them. And Joseph, he's just marking time in prison now because he doesn't know when he'll get out. And he says, he interprets the dreams. And the interpretation of the dreams is exact, the way it turns out. And so, you know, one is saved, the other one is killed between the butcher and the baker. But word gets to Pharaoh because Pharaoh has a troubling dream. And in Pharaoh's troubling dream, he's dreamed that there are 7 skinny cows and 7 fat cows. And none of the smart people, none of the soothsayers in Egypt can figure it out. But word comes to Pharaoh that there's a wise guy in prison, you know, who's interpreting dreams for free. And so Pharaoh calls for Joseph to come out of prison. He comes out. He's smelling like a rat. He's in dirty clothes. Pharaoh, you know, tells his men, he said, before you bring this smelly guy to me, he said, he said, bathe him. Give him some fresh clothes. Shave him. Give him a haircut. You know, get this guy, you know, presentable. And so finally, Joseph is brought before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh tells him, he said, I had this bad dream, and nobody can solve it. They probably couldn't solve it because they were afraid if they gave the wrong interpretation, they might have been killed. So Pharaoh says, let me tell you the dream and you tell me. What does it mean? He said, I saw 7 skinny cows and 7 fat cows. What, brother Joseph, does this mean? So Joseph prayed on it. He thought about it. And you know what he said? He said, Pharaoh, it means that there are going to be 7 good years. Those are the fat cows. He said, but then there are going to be 7 skinny years. He said, those are the skinny cows. He said, I suggest that right now you start collecting all the grain in Egypt. Collect all the grain in Egypt. Put it into storehouses because we're already into the first of the 7 fat years. And when the 7 skinny years come, we're going to need that storehouse. And Pharaoh's so impressed with the wisdom of Joseph, he says, effectively, I'm going to make you the Secretary of Agriculture. You're going to be in charge of everything in Egypt. And Joseph is brought out of prison, and at that point, Joseph begins a national agricultural program to prepare for these bad years. And so for 7 years, Joseph is the man. He is the head of agriculture in all of Egypt. And at the end of the 7 years, the good years, there's a drought. And the drought is not just in Egypt, but it's all around. It's also in the land of Canaan. It's in the land where Jacob and his sons are living. And they've long, at least the brothers, have kind of put Joseph out of their memory. The dad is still grieving. But the brothers come to the dad and they say, Dad, in a little while we're going to be out of food. But we understand that there are storehouses in Egypt, and maybe if you send us there, we can purchase food. And so they go to Egypt. The dad lets them go reluctantly. But they make the case. They say, Dad, if we don't go to Egypt, we may be dead. And so they let them go to Egypt. And when they get there, eventually they are brought before Joseph. But the funny thing in life is they don't know it's Joseph. But Joseph has not forgotten them. And you know, in life, you never forget a person who's been mean to you. I don't know about you, but I got a whole list of them. And you know what my father used to tell me? He said, Nick, he said, a politician has a long memory.
That's right.
He said, they will never, ever forget. But Joseph is the Secretary of Agriculture in Egypt. His brothers come before him, and all they want to do is negotiate food. And Joseph knows right away who they are. They're talking in Hebrew. He's talking in Egyptian. But he knows exactly who they are. And so he negotiates price for the food, and they feel very good. But then he talks to them, and he said, tell me about your father. So they tell him the father. He said, is he alive? They said, yes. They said, and do you have another brother? They said, well, we had two. We have two. One is a little boy. His name is Benjamin. But there was another brother named Joseph, and he is no longer. He's no longer with us. And, you know, now Joseph is messing with them. He said, oh, tell me about both of those brothers. And then he, you know, gives them all the grain that they want. They pack up their camels, and they're getting ready to go back to Daddy Jacob. But Joseph, he's still messing with them. He takes a silver cup. He puts it in one of the grain bags. And as they begin to head out, he stops them. He says, somebody stole my cup. And they said, what do you mean somebody stole your cup? And he said, somebody stole my cup. And then he has his men go through all the grains of bags, and sure enough, they find a cup, a silver cup. And when they find that silver cup, Joseph says, I'm not going to let you go back unless you bring back your brother Benjamin. And then the brothers say, oh, we can't do that. They say, it'll kill our father. We've already lost his older brother, Joseph. And he says, bring back your brother Benjamin. And, you know, and they go back and forth. And then finally, Joseph ends this drama. He tells them, he said, I am Joseph. I am the one you tried to kill. I am the one you sold into slavery. I am the one you hated. And the brothers break down. They start crying, and they say, have mercy on us. Joseph, we're so sorry. We know we shouldn't have done it. We know what we did, but have mercy on us. And Joseph tells them, he says, bring back your father. Bring back your father. He said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And he said, God has put me here for a time like this. God has given me favor to protect you and your sorry selves, and bring your dad back here. And, you know, and eventually they bring the dad and Benjamin back. And the land of Goshen is set aside by Joseph as a place for his family, his brothers and his father to live. And the Jewish people begin to prosper at that time. So I want to break this down, this favor business down just a little bit more. Yes, the favor that Joseph receives is not for anything Joseph has done. The favor that his father loves him is because his father simply loves him. Matter of fact, his father really loved his mother, and Joseph is just the embodiment of the mother. And you know, sometimes in our lives it's like that too. Sometimes in our lives we benefit because of somebody else. By the same token, sometimes people are mean to us because of somebody else. We didn't do anything to deserve it, but sometimes people are mean. When I was running for city council the first time, I met, what's that church, Mike, over on Joy Road at Grand River, where Roy Allen used to be the pastor. Oh, yeah. I'm over at Roy Allen's church, and I'm sitting in the pulpit with Clyde Cleveland, and who was a city council member, and there were other people running for council, and we were all in the chancel of the church. And while we're there, another minister, not Roy Allen, but another minister, he just went off on me, and he was saying all kind of bad things. And Clyde Cleveland had his legs crossed, and he's smiling, and he leaned over at me, and he said, I said, Clyde, what is that all about? He said, I'll tell you what that's about. I said, what? He said, you are paying for the sins of the father. I said, you mean my father? He said, yeah, that guy's got a problem with your father. It was terrible. But so that's the opposite of the favor. But when you are favored, somebody may like you for your father, or they may like you just because of how you look. Like that lady I was telling you at the beginning of the sermon, who's breathtakingly beautiful. She's just born that way. And sometimes, you're born rich, you're born beautiful, and you just benefit. But in the case of Joseph, first point is that he is blessed because of the favor of God. And it's something that he, is assigned to, it's accrued to him, and he hadn't done a thing to deserve it. And the same is true in our lives. There are times in our lives when we are blessed. Another point about favor is that sometimes people can't stand your favor. There's always going to be somebody out there who's going to say, I don't like you. I don't like how you look. I don't like how you talk. I don't like your mama, your daddy, your grandmama, or your granddaddy. I don't like anything about you. And you may have absolutely nothing to do with this. But this favor that God gives us is for a reason. And in the case of Joseph, as he says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And at the appropriate time in the life of Joseph, he uses the blessing that God has given to him to save not just his brothers, but his father as well. And I tell you, there's nothing greater in life than being able to give back to somebody else. And that's what happens in the life of Joseph.